Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on a Wednesday afternoon for our webinar on 3 steps to achieve project success. Now, in the run-up to this session, someone messaged me on LinkedIn saying, surely there are more than 3 steps to project success. There are any number of factors that can contribute to whether a project succeeds or fails. And of course, that person was absolutely right. But what I would say to you is the steps we're going to take you through today, structure and alignment, introducing quality, gaining early technical clarity, is that if you don't do those things on a complex project, you're all but guaranteeing you'll have significant problems further down the line. I'm joined on the webinar today by Dan Dore, CEO of Assured Thought, and Alistair Mackenzie, co-founder of ARRT Integration, and they're going to share their insights into what they see as the critical steps for project success. We're going to start with some quick introductions from each of us before we get into the main content of the session. Dan, Alistair and I will take you through a step each from the approach. Then we'll take some questions before wrapping up and finishing hopefully within the hour that we have scheduled. If you do have any questions, either now or as we're going through the webinar on anything that we're discussing today, you can add them to the Q&A section in Zoom, and we're going to do our best to get to them today. Any questions we don't answer, though, today, we will answer in the follow-up to the webinar, so please ask away. Okay, let's get started with introductions. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Adam Lawrence. I've worked in projects, program, portfolio roles at major financial services firms in the Lloyd's market, general insurance, wealth management, banking over the last 25 years. In projects from standard BAU type projects, regulatory changes to £100 million plus full digital transformation programs. But what I can do when I think about my career, I can trace the start of my thinking on projects to one of my very first jobs where I worked in a call centre. Many of you will work in businesses with contact centres, and if you do, one thing I'd urge you to do periodically is to spend some time listening to calls, as that's where you're going to find out how your business really operates, the challenges your frontline people face, and the true experiences your customers receive. The call centre I worked in, and I'm not going to name the business today, seemed to have the sole purpose of pacifying customers rather than actually helping them. And I realised pretty quickly that I couldn't operate in that kind of environment. I was forever getting in trouble for not hitting my call targets, disappearing off from my seat, to actually try and help solve customer problems rather than just palming them off. And that wasn't appreciated. I moved off that job pretty quickly, and it was from there that I ended up in the project management world. As my project management career progressed, however, I found myself having the same experiences as I'd had in the call centre, frustrations with processes, approaches, methodologies that were meant to help, but that in reality didn't give my customers, who were now the execs and sponsors of the projects I was working on, what they needed. After many years of challenging those unhelpful patterns as a solo project manager, I decided to set up Create Cadence. Create Cadence is a project management consultancy on a mission to remove the mystique, the pain, the frustration that we've all experienced in project delivery. And we have 3 simple approaches to achieve that. First, genuine expertise. Project management is all we do, and we're experts at it. Tailored solutions. We don't do cookie cutter approaches. We take the time to understand our clients and deliver the value that they need. And finally, and most importantly to me, is approachability. We have a clear, transparent pricing based on delivery of that real value for our customers. We use language our clients understand, and we build real lasting partnerships. So that's me, that's Create Cadence. Dan, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself and your business, Assured Thought.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Daniel Dore, and I'm the founder and CEO of Assured Thought. So my background started in development over 30 years ago, and through the year 2000, for those that remember, I transitioned into quality assurance, working at the BBC, which was fantastic. And ever since then, I've worked within the quality assurance space, primarily on many digital transformation projects, primarily in the financial services sector. 9 years ago, I started Assured Thought for the same reason as Adam. I was using consultancies that just weren't delivering the value that I was fully expecting. And Assured Thought, we specialize in quality engineering, quality assurance, and software testing, primarily serving clients in the UK and very much in the financial services space, working with the likes of Rathbones, RBC, 7IN, etc. And fundamentally, at Assured Thought, what we passionately believe in is that quality can transform the effectiveness of projects and deliver holistic quality across an organisation. That's me. Thank you, Adam.
Okay, great. Alistair, hand over to you next to introduce yourself and ARRT.
Afternoon, guys. Yeah, my name is Alistair Mackenzie. I am a co-founder and director at ARRT Integration Limited. Probably between myself and my co-founders, we've been steeped in the IT industry for probably more years than we'd want to admit to be honest. But we've worked with some amazing brands and companies, and like from huge banks to utility companies to large consultancies. So we've actually been building generally round about the integration space, but now going into the digital transformation. And then in terms of ARRT, ARRT's an IT consultancy and a product development business that we started. And we specialize in architecting, designing, and developing these digital transformation solutions. So we liken it a little bit to when you're doing a house build, we turn up with all the architecture and all the foundation blocks that you'll need for your digital transformation project and your solution. And we allow then the clients to really just concentrate on their customized bits of their project. And we hope that all that experience that we've gleaned and all the tech that we've built up over the years, we hopefully are taking to the table a significant amount of functionality that they don't really have to consider. That's me, Adam. That's the introduction.
Great. Thanks, Alistair. Thanks, Dan. So I'm going to move on then straight into, so that's the intro's done. Let's move on into the content of today's session, which are 3 steps to project success. The first step I want to take you through today is alignment. So what do I mean by alignment? Well, upfront alignment is critical to project success because it ensures that all the stakeholders share a common understanding of the project goals, the objectives, expectations. That unified vision helps prevent misunderstandings, conflicts down the line, and it facilitates smoother execution and more effective decision making. By aligning everyone at the start, you can create a really strong foundation for collaboration, ensure efficient resource allocation, and really enhance overall project coherence and significantly increase the likelihood of achieving desired outcomes. Now, this sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? When we think about alignment and getting ourselves straight at the start of a project. But 2 months ago, we launched an online project diagnostic assessment tool, which is designed to help organisations structure their projects for success. And here are the two of the questions that we ask within that assessment. Does everyone in the team understand and agree on what's driving the change you're trying to implement? And secondly, are you confident that the existing team has a full understanding of the enterprise? And by the enterprise, we mean the organisation, its business, and the technology. Now, these questions are quite clearly all about alignment, and I think most of us would agree, looking at them, that getting to a good place where the project team is pulling in the same direction, understands the business that it's trying to change is pretty important. But what we've seen in the results that we've had to date so far on the diagnostic tool is that only 10% of the respondents answered with a confident yes to both these questions. The answers were pretty similar between the 2 questions. And 90% of people answered with a less than clear answer of no or sort of. Now, I think when you've got tens of thousands or even tens of millions of pounds at stake, I think we'd all much rather be in that place of being confident in our answers than not when it comes to alignment. So how is it that we can achieve alignment? Now, I think there are 3 clear steps that you need to work through in order to get to a good place around alignment on a complex project. Number 1 is a unifying vision, a clear guiding statement that everybody from the project team to the senior stakeholders to the wider business can really get behind and understand. I've got an example. I'm using this because it's a fairly straightforward one from a project I managed a few years ago, where we were looking to move an insurance client from posted documentation to eDocs. The vision for that project was, we want to improve customer experience, save £1 million in postage costs for the business by moving from posted insurance documentation to eDocs. Shows the age of the project. That I'm talking about that. But what was great with this project was we had a really clear vision, a really clear why, I guess, for want of a better phrase, as to what we were doing. And that was really useful when communicating the project and the reason to move forward with it within the business. Once you've got that unifying vision, it's really then about breaking things down into well-defined deliverable outcomes. So in my example, what do we really mean by an improved customer experience? What does that look like? Let's put some defined outcomes around what we want the business to look like on the other side of the project. So once you've got the vision, you've got the outcomes. What you then need to get you from the vision to the outcome is what we're calling here a map. And that map is what shows you how to get there, and it aligns your leadership, your business, and your project teams. And in terms of this first step, it's really that map that I'm going to spend some time talking about today. So in our business, we've developed an approach to creating this map, and this evolved from other projects that we've worked on. And what we call this map in our business is the high level functional map. We probably need to get the marketing team working on a better name for that, but that's essentially what it is. It's a high level functional map that allows us to align and successfully deliver a project. As I said, we first created this version of a map or framework, as it really is, while working on a big replatforming program, £100 million plus program, where we were brought in to manage the integration of a new system into our client's estate. We were given the instruction at the start to build 60 pipes to link the new system to the existing applications. But it quickly became apparent that no one in that business really knew, or certainly to any level of detail, why we were building out those pipes, what they were being used for, whether they form part of the new world, and when we could say we were done and we'd finished. And what the framework allows you to do is it gives you all of those things. So here's how we built that framework out, that functional map. First of all, we mapped the business from top to bottom. This was a complex project. It involved pretty much the whole business. So we mapped the business out from top to bottom with simple high-level user stories. And the key to this is that these were things that anybody in the business could understand, right from the very beginning of onboarding a client, setting up the client's account, right the way through all the transactions a client might complete, to exit the client exiting the business on the other side. So mapping everything out from top to bottom within the business. We then added the current tech provision against the framework. Once we got all the business functions, we could look at which technologies, which applications were impacted as part of all of these functions within the business. Then we were able to look at the areas of the business that were going to change as part of this replatforming program, and really get a clear picture of the scope and where the impacts were within the program that we were working on. Step 4 was then about validation. The key to this, and the key that makes this, and why we're calling this step alignment, is you have to get everybody on board with the approach. So making sure that the language is simple so everyone can understand, everyone knows and agrees that you've documented the business in the right way, documented the tech, documented the changes that are going to be made. So everyone buys into the map and understands it and is happy to work with it and use it. And then the final step is then to put this thing into use. So we were able to use it to create the structure for our work stream on the program, to track our progress on the program, to make sure that we were on the right track, getting towards those outcomes within the work stream on the program. But what we found once we developed this was that other work streams within that program, areas such as the target operating model team who were documenting new business processes, the training teams, they could use this tool because it was a framework from which to hang the changes that were being made. And so we instantly saw a much wider application of the framework that we'd created. You know, and why does all of this matter? I've sort of mentioned a few times, but it's worth emphasizing. This type of tool, this type of map framework, it gets everybody speaking the same language. It gets everybody understanding the priorities. And most importantly, it means everybody can understand exactly where you are on a complex program. And that certainly isn't always the case in my experience. I've seen a number of big programs where loose stats get thrown around all the time. Things like we're 85% done. And then 6 months later, you find yourself still saying you're 85% done. And that's what happens when you don't have an adequate framework, an adequate structure against which to track your progress. And being in that sort of situation I've described is really not what any business wants to be, or certainly not in any individual, whether it's a stakeholder reporting to a board or a project manager wants to be. It's essential to know exactly where you are within your program. We've also, since developing the framework, we've used this approach to structure brand new programs from scratch, and we've done that with a client that we've been working with recently. And the client actually named, this is possibly a more exciting name for this framework. They named the framework the treasure map. The reason they called it the treasure map is because it shows you exactly where the value is in your delivery, and it allows you to align that business value with technical implementation, again, allowing you to prioritize and track your progress. So to sum up what I've gone through there, first key pillar in achieving success in a project when we're starting off a project, particularly a complex project or program, is to make sure that you've got alignment. Get that vision defined up front, define your outcomes, and then produce the map that gets you there. If you fail to align, you will undoubtedly, you'll experience problems within your delivery. But getting that vision, the outcomes, and the map right is going to set you off on the road to success. So that's step one. Dan, I'm going to hand over to you now to talk about the second step.
Thank you, Adam. So yeah, first of all, can I just say a big thank you to Create Cadence for arranging this webinar. It's great, and I really appreciate the invite for today. So let's dive into the second step of our approach to project success, and I'm calling it Shift Left. Some of you may have heard of that term. It's very much part of the quality engineering discipline, and this is all about getting the right people doing the right stuff involved up front. But before we get into the details, let me explain what we mean by Shift Left. So Shift Left is about integrating quality practices into every phase of the software development lifecycle. So it's not just about testing at the end, which is traditionally where it happens. And as you can see from the diagram, that's a fairly typical project where there's a load of work done up front, including development or a new piece of software is delivered, and then all the testing is very much at the back end. Shift Left is very much about bringing the emphasis for quality and involvement of quality far earlier in that life cycle. And fundamentally, it means moving those quality checks and testing far earlier in the development process. So instead of waiting until the end to find and fix defects, what we want to do is identify and resolve defects as early as possible. And even better, what we want to do is prevent those defects from even happening. And that proactive approach, that proactive strategy helps reduce the overall costs and time to market for programs and projects, and fundamentally ensures a far smoother project flow. You're much more likely to hit your timeframes, far more likely to hit your end date. So not only are we getting QA specialists involved earlier, and it doesn't need an army, it could be one individual that's just getting involved earlier and guiding and supporting the other teams, but we are also promoting that quality is a key component within a project. It's considered from the outset, and it's fundamental to how that project's going to be delivered. So yeah, so now that's a very high level overview of what Shift Left is. Now what I want to do is just cover off some of the benefits of adopting that Shift Left approach and incorporating those quality engineering practices early on. Okay, so the number one benefit is that defect prevention. And by embracing that shift left approach from the start, as I said before, we're not only catching defects early, where they're quicker, cheaper to fix, which obviously saves time and resources, but more importantly, we're looking to prevent those defects from even happening. And what the graph represents is a typical project where we're not going to put all the blame on developers in terms of defect injection, but it's very much going to be how good the requirements are, how good the scope of the project is, etc. That really does drive how good that development's going to be. And because the developers are writing the code, typically that's where the defects first happen. And then it tends to go into that testing, and you can see the orange line is showing us where defects are typically found. And as you go through a project, particularly towards the end of a project and when you go live, the cost of fixing that defect becomes massive, exponentially goes up through the life cycle of a program. And you can easily imagine why, because if you're getting close to live and you find a significant defect, you've basically got to go all the way back to development. You've got to fix that. You've got regression tests to go through. Suddenly timelines are being extended. The cost of resources is going up, and you're getting to the point when you might even make decisions to go live with issues, which is obviously not the position we want to go in. So that red line is really highlighting how expensive defects are as you go through the life cycle. Hence, the benefit about defect prevention is really important. And if we can go to the next slide, please, Adam, we can look at the impacts of shift left. Because what shift left is fundamentally doing is it means that by preventing defects even happening, although you're still going to get defects, it means that you're going to you haven't just got the QA team looking to test those and find them. Developers are also doing their best to identify issues while they're going through their code with specialist tools and disciplines. It means that those defects aren't even making out the development life cycle. And overall, the timelines improve, the number of resources isn't as many, and the cost of fixing defects and the cost of the project fundamentally is drastically reduced. Just looking at the next benefit, it's about increased collaboration, because the shift left approach promotes that collaboration across teams, be it BAs, be it developers, be it testers, operations teams. It's about all working together and sharing that responsibility and accountability for quality right from the beginning. And that collaboration fundamentally leads to better communication and fewer misunderstandings. And one of my bugbears is people making assumptions that almost 99% of the time are wrong. It's about reducing those assumptions and ensuring that teams are working collaboratively and working better together. The next benefit is really around increased efficiency and productivity. When you have early quality checks, you streamline the whole development process, because the developers are geared up for quality. They're building quality into their code. They're coding defensively. They're ensuring that security is already there. They're ensuring performance is built into the code. They're all those good disciplines that developers can learn, but can also be backed up with some really great tools that can help developers as well. And the final big benefit is really around cost savings. So by very obviously by detecting defects early and preventing defects, it means that the projects aren't suffering from issues far later on. The development process is far better streamlined. The testing is going to be easily planned and usually on time, because really what testing can then focus on is just around integration and working with business users to ensure it meets their requirements. So we got some four significant benefits there, and at Short Thought, what we've done is we've taken all the experience of the projects we've worked on, and particularly implementing quality engineering and shift left practices, and we built a framework that incorporates those shift left disciplines to help organizations access and improve their QE practices. So if we have a quick look at the model, I won't go through it in detail, but fundamentally what we've got is 5 maturity levels, starting at foundational QA and going through to continuous quality. And organizations will be at depending on the organization you're at, they'll be at various levels on that maturity scale. Foundational QA is really just the very basic testing. That's usually you've got a very immature test team, if at all. You might just have users testing, and it's about really just finding defects as best you can. Most companies tend to be an integrated QA, so you've got a QA team, and they're very much working with other teams to do testing properly and with a strategy. But when you get to the shift left, number 3, that's when the benefits really start kicking in, because then that's about preventing defects from happening. And then what we talk about is when you integrate QA within an organization, QE becomes very much holistic. It becomes part of what, everyone's accountable for quality at that point, not just one team, everyone's responsible. And then level 5, it's really about just ensuring you've got that continuous quality in place within an organization. And that's when the quality is really part of the DNA of that company. And I'm sure we all can think of some companies, the obvious examples are Apple, for example, where quality is just ingrained in everything they do, right from the design through build, through everything. And, the end client can feel that quality when they pick up an iPhone or whatever it might be. And basically what we've got is underpinning those maturity levels. We've got 6 key QE maturity drivers that there's a whole set of tangible actions, steps, templates, methods that we have within those drivers that lift the maturity of an organization so that they can go up those maturity levels. And, the benefits can be significant. One of our clients has seen a 40% improvement in their product quality, 25% reduction in the time to market, all through following this maturity model. So just to wrap up, involving the right people up front through the lens of quality engineering and shift left is crucial for a project success. And as I say, it doesn't need to be an army. It's just about making sure that you've got the right people that understand quality involved from the very inception. And that QE maturity journey that I've just been through, that really does help organizations achieve that sustained success by progressively enhancing their quality practices. And at that point, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Adam.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. I was enjoying Alistair's face when you said we don't blame developers.
Yeah, we always get the blame.
I know. No, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, Dan. Okay, so Alistair, hand over to you then for step 3 in the approach.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And I just want to echo Dan's comments as well. Thank you, Adam, for inviting us along with this and sharing these steps. So my critical step to project success is really about achieving technical clarity early on in a project. Do you want to just go on that next slide, Adam? Thanks. So basically, see, in terms of like a digital transformation project, it's really part of a wide ecosystem of applications and systems. And I think what people's maybe the understanding of what a digital transformation project these days isn't, it's not just an island where software applications sit and there's a bunch of manual processes that go into kind of, keeping that going. What your kind of digital transformation projects do now is they actually are automating the business completely. And to automate that business, they need to have multiple applications involved in that process. And I think that's the bit that at this final step that we've got is really about is trying to get that clarity of what that actually means. So just to give you a kind of context around that, when you do a digital transformation project, usually the reason that people do that is because they're trying to replace software, they're trying to upgrade their technology stack, their services, their APIs, or whatever it is. Usually it's to make a fundamental change, and usually it's to upgrade. Now, what companies do in that kind of stage, they go into a software procurement process. So they basically go out to the market and they'll go into a step which is called the RFI step, which is a request for information. So they'll get all the software vendors basically giving them loads of information about their software product and their service. And then after a period of time, that company will probably whittle that down to maybe a short list of ones that they want to go forward with. And that'll be like what we call the request for proposal. So that's much more detailed, and it's much more information is there. It's about the capabilities, about the functionality of the system, and all the different things that that application or system does. And that's all great, obviously, because that's what they're trying to say. But what we find when the projects that we get involved is there is no real assessment of how does that application fit within the wider ecosystem. And like the companies might do a scoring system, or they might maybe even go to a reference site and say, well, how did you get on with it? But there is no real kicking off the tires of that application or software product to actually then find out, will it actually fit within their ecosystem? And the upshot of that is that when people don't go to this next due diligence step, these mistakes are run into the hundreds of thousands, and they sometimes go into the millions, because if you've got a system that's sitting there, functionally it might do what it needs to do, but if it can't be part of the wider ecosystem, what we find is that that system doesn't last very long. It usually gets taken out of the landscape pretty quickly because it needs to be part of that wider process, because that is what the new digital world expects. And the other thing that this step we think does is it really assesses the technical maturity of the organization. So a lot of organizations embark on digital transformation projects, but maybe aren't really prepared or equipped for the complexity that they're just about to embark on. They just think, okay, we'll get some tech in, we'll do this and that. But this step really does help put a lens on their maturity as an organization to actually even embark on that digital transformation project. And we believe as well that this step really helps the complex digital transformation projects, because it really is the same step, but probably just repeated a number of times. Do you want to go on to the next slide? So what is this mythical process or solution that we're offering that adds so much value? So we call it the candidate process. And effectively, all it is a process and a digital solution that delivers the technical clarity at the beginning of your project. Adam, do you want to just go on that next slide? So how does it actually work? So the way that we ask a company is we say to a company, right, can you identify a simple business process? And inside that process, what we want them to do is basically have maybe the interaction between 2 or 3 different systems. And maybe it has to be, let's say if it was the RFI and the RFP process, obviously we would want to involve the system that they're just about to purchase. Then all we do then is we embark on a requirements gathering stage. We gather up the requirements, we get acceptance criteria from that company to say what they would deem as a success. And then the step then is, what we do is we come in and we land a lot of our tech. And as I said previously in the slides, we come in with all these foundational pillars that we think then the business doesn't really have to consider that. We've hopefully built out all the error handling, all the different ways that they would actually do the visualization of the process. And then we just concentrate on the requirements of that specific candidate process. And now the duration of that, believe it or not, is not, usually it's a high performing team that we get in to do that. That high performing team understand all the things that they need to do in terms of a digital transformation solution. So basically that team will really go at it with the requirements that they've got, and they will basically do the interactions. And we think that that is achievable, and we've proved it in a number of cases where it's maybe 4 to 6 weeks or 2 to 3 sprints within, if you're within an agile world. Now, what you've really done there is that when you basically start integrating with these applications or solutions, one of the key things is, like, when we go to the software provider and say, can you give us a development environment? You wouldn't believe how many times that becomes a problem. And the fact that they can't really readily spin up a development environment for you or a test environment, that is pretty critical to your project. If you've got a digital transformation project and that software provider seems to find it hard to be able to put together a dev system or a test system, or it's going to be quite costly to do that, or we don't have the data. You're starting to uncover information within that 4 to 6 week period that you don't really want to find out 12 months into a project when you're maybe starting to interact with them. So things like that. And even if you say, for instance, they had an API layer, and let's say you're saying, right, that process might be, say, a client onboarding process, and we're getting information out of their solution, and we're creating something within the back end product system. If that's happening over a period of time which isn't very performant, or even if the data that they say is available, you can't get access to that via the APIs, then you kind of understand then that, well, actually, how mature is this API layer? Are we buying something that is maybe where there's going to be a lot more development involved? Because I would say that in a high percentage of the projects that we get involved in, the actual organization, unwittingly to them, they have to go and spend a significant amount of money filling all these gaps and holes. So all of this that process, I believe, starts to kind of then just really start to kind of put the lens on a number of things to do with that project. So as I say, the outcomes are much greater understanding of the software provider, the capabilities, the maturity of them. The other thing that we think this gives us to the actual stakeholders is it gives confidence, because what I said at the beginning there is that if you've got a maturity assessment of your organization, if you're able to demonstrate an automated business process that interacts with 4 or 5 systems, or whatever the process is, and you're able to demonstrate that very early on in the project, that promotes significant confidence within your stakeholders. And you will definitely need that when you start spending the millions of pounds that these projects actually spend, because that's what people want to know, is that this is going to be a success. And if you can prove that early on, then you're a much better things. I think the other side of it is that timescales and costs are much more understood, because if you have a good candidate process or you have a bad candidate process, really you're just repeating a candidate process over and over again. And if you're starting to realize that first initial easy candidate process ended up, the timescales were much longer than what you expected, or the costs started spiraling out of control, then it's pretty obvious that once you get to the more complex processes, you're going to end up with much greater costs. The other thing that we think this process gives you is a complete documented set of artifacts, and all the lessons learned, the understanding of the risks, the dependencies, and all of that stuff. That is usually the stuff that the company gets out of that, along with all the information that it gains within that very short period of time, which we believe is quite a small investment considering they're spending millions of pounds. And in terms of ongoing benefits, what sometimes happens is, even if a company or a software provider does fall short within the candidate process, the company might not have much option to go with somebody else. So what we find is that having that process at the beginning, because they haven't signed the contract at that stage, it gives them much better leverage when they're doing the contract negotiation. So if they're saying, well, we're going to have to spend money filling this gap because we thought you did it and you said you did it, then the contract negotiations go down a completely different route. And then, as I've said maybe a few times already, is that if this process goes well, it really does give you the technical blueprint for the transformation project going forward. And it allows then, everybody then is getting, they get a well-defined and well-oiled machine going, because they've actually made this a success. And again, because of maybe what we do and what we bring to the table in terms of all the foundational blocks in the cloud, maybe at real time, we're probably taking a number of things to the company and saying, you don't have to go and build this from scratch. So we think that we can accelerate that digital journey for these clients. So that very small process, in our opinion, and we've seen it work very well, and for a number of businesses, and we think it saves a significant amount of money. Yeah, Adam, that's my final step.
No, that's great. Thanks, Alistair. I mean, we've very much focused on the 3 steps on the start of a project, and there's an important reason for that. It's the start that sets the tone for ongoing success or failure, and you get it right at the start, and you're going to have a much smoother ride. Get it wrong and you're on the back foot throughout the whole project and looking at a costly pivot. I mean, we get involved in quite a lot of recovery type projects coming in partway through where a project's failing, and it can almost always, the problems can almost always be traced back to something that did, at the start of that project. So whether the vision and goals were unclear from the start, whether key areas of the business weren't engaged, whether suppliers turn out to be more skilled at selling than they are at actually delivering, whether we underestimate or whether the scale of the task has been underestimated. These are all common problems you see on complex problems and projects. And I guess when you do this project recovery, you're usually in the position of having to reset or restart a project, and that's a really painful experience to have to go through. Necessary but painful. So it's far better, far less expensive to spend the time and effort to get things right at the outset. And I think the 3 steps we've talked about here about getting your alignment straight, engaging the right people and having a focus on quality up front, and getting clarity on your tech solution early in the process are kind of 3 steps that can really help you to set the foundation for a successful project delivery and prevent all that pain that can come further down the line. So we're just going to go to a couple of questions. We've maybe got time for 1 or 2 before we wrap up. I guess, Alistair, seeing as we were just speaking with you, how the question that's sort of come in is about the pace of technology. we can all see how quickly things are changing at the moment. The process that you've described, the question is around how can that help support a business given the pace of change in technology at the moment?
Yeah, so it really just comes back to some fundamental principles of integration architecture. So we believe that if you build the actual, some people call it the brain, in the middle of the organization, you model that brain on what the business does, all the processes around what the business does. That is the thing that actually stays constant within their landscape. So you can have applications that come and go, and basically when things change, which will change, you want to be able to say that that piece in the middle that's shaped on the business that you're trying to run, that actually then can talk to all these different systems. So being able to put that component in the middle, which we call, generally it'll be an integration engine, and it will be in the cloud, and it's processing real-time data. Being able to do that is really how you future-proof your business, because then if you can translate information from one system to another through that integration engine, then what you're allowing to happen is that anything can come into that environment, and you can, it's like plug and play basically. There's obviously work to do the translation from the middle bit into the new component, but that is isolated off because that is the change. What happens generally when you've got a large integration projects that have actually, or digital transformation projects, they've had a monolithic application. And to try and remove that monolithic application, they are very, very hard to get rid of because the business has been actually built around that. So what we kind of advocate is that build your business around that integration engine in the middle and make sure that that's fit for your business purposes. And then all the technology that's available today within the cloud, then you can then build out the solutions that actually do that translation layer into all this new tech, new components. Like even right now, we believe that that's the innovation pieces like machine learning or blockchain or AI services. If you've got processes in the middle that define your business and they're flowing through all your kind of processes at that stage, that information can be going into any service. It just needs to be translated into what that new system or service requires. So we think that's how you future-proof your business.
No, brilliant. Thanks, Alistair. I hope that's answered that question. Dan, there's one for you about the shift left approach. Just have you got any examples of recent sort of experiences, recent projects where that's really helped?
Funnily enough, we have. Yeah. So we work with one client, and first of all, we started with an assessment of their current status of quality assurance and software testing. And as a consequence of that, we're able to provide a whole raft of recommendations, and we obviously carried on working with that client. And the sort of the shift left approach, it's not necessarily just tied down to testing and QA. So, for example, we helped this company, their legal team, making sure that there was quality criteria into every contract they had with their software vendors. And just one paragraph, because suppliers all take notice of the contracts, just one paragraph about the level of quality expected to be delivered into that client made all the difference. And suddenly the level of quality that was arriving was already good, whereas before it'd been average. And, you know, our client ended up picking up the bill for that. But then once you get into business analysis and working with the BAs to, you know, just ensure the requirements are unambiguous and of a good quality that developers can then really understand, they're obviously traceable back to the original scope of the project, etc. That also made a huge difference in terms of the code that the developers were then going to write. We supported that company in ensuring that we had management or quality tools or tools that meant that the teams were able to collaborate far better. So instead of having an instance of Jira and Azure DevOps, for example, we got those combined. So there's just one system that everybody is using. So there's one version of the truth, one gold source of all information. And we also supported developers in selecting tools that were able to effectively QA their code. We supported the developers in how they coded defensively in terms of ensuring that DevSecOps was built into their code, performance was built into their code. And again, all those things make a massive difference further down the line because it's already there. You know, you when you get to performance testing later on, you can be confident that that system is going to perform to the expected standard. You're not going to have to go back to the beginning and work out from an architectural or coding point of view where the issues are. And all of this fundamentally meant that the QA was really just focused on the important stuff, which is making sure that new system or change system integrated into the wider landscape within that company, and data was able to move between systems far better. And, you know, fundamentally the users were happy with the end result. And, you know, from that client having projects that were regularly overrunning, the quality was always a bit average, and budgets were always busted. It meant that that client was actually starting to deliver projects that were on time, on budget, and to a level of quality that everyone was happy with. So yeah, tangible benefits, obviously.
Yeah, some great examples in there. Thanks, Dan. And in the interest of fairness, I picked out a question for me as well. So the question is, how do you find the balance between spending time doing upfront analysis at the start of a program and actually just getting on with it? And I kind of think I'm going to answer this in a way that I answer most project management questions, that you probably need to do both. And so it is about finding the balance. And to me, that's the kind of key element of project management often is having two kind of opposing ideas and being able to balance them. So it obviously depends on the complexity of whatever project or program you're working on. The more complex it is, the more I would advocate spending time doing the upfront analysis and getting things clear in terms of the kind of framework and the map that we've built. But it doesn't mean, you know, and we've worked in partnership with Alistair before, but it doesn't mean while you're doing that, building that framework out, you can't also be doing the candidate process that Alistair described at the same time. So you're actually making forward progress while ensuring that you've got the right frameworks, the right analysis, the right structures, documentation all in place. And I think that's the key, is finding that balance between the things that you can move forward that are going to get you answers versus the things that you really need to do that are going to set your program up for success. And that would be my answer to that question. So yeah, apologies if we haven't picked up on any on questions that we haven't picked up on some of the questions that have come in. As I said at the start, we're going to come back to those, and we'll come back with answers to people who've asked those questions in our follow-up. I'm just going to just sort of wrap up from there. So just a few things I want to to mention before we close, and then have a little story to finish. So I've mentioned our project diagnostic tool a couple of times today. This is a tool we've built to help businesses think about how they can overcome challenges in project delivery. It's completely free to use. We will send out a link after the webinar, but you can also get one by get to it by scanning the QR code on the page now. It's a completely free assessment. At the end of it, you can also book in a 15-minute session with me if you want to talk about any of the results you've got, any challenges you've got in your business. Again, free, no obligation. More than happy to help off the back of that. Very much want to thank Dan and Alistair for giving up their time this afternoon, providing so many kind of useful insights as part of their slides. And again, on the slide we're showing here, the QR code, it takes you to a link tree, which has got links to all of our profiles on LinkedIn, to our websites, and as I said, to the project diagnostic tool as well. Please feel free to connect with any of us or all of us, and also feel free to reach out to us directly about anything to do with project management, quality engineering, integration, development. I think hopefully speak for all of us in saying that we're here to help. More than happy to have conversations. More than happy to do what we can to answer any challenges that you've got. So as I said, I like to sort of finish up these sort of sessions with a story, and this one is a story that resonates with me, and I come back to quite often when I think about the start of any major client project. For those of you who don't recognise this picture, it's the story is from a book I read a while back called The Iron War, which is actually about two triathletes who are at the top of their game, competing in an epic race in the Hawaii Ironman in 1989. Now, one of the athletes, Dave Scott, had won the race in the last 4 years he competed, while the other, Mark Allen, was known as one of the most talented athletes of the day, but he'd failed to win in Hawaii. He'd had numerous mishaps, training that hadn't gone well, challenges that had happened, and he'd never actually won that particular race, which is the gold standard in terms of Ironman racing. So in the book, Mark Allen details his approach to training for the 1989 race. And he states that his thought is that it was only when he realized that rather than doing the training he thought was needed, he had to do the training that the race required. And that when he had that realization, that was when he'd be truly ready. And of course, in that 1989 battle, Mark Allen went on to triumph. So that's kind of my final message. That's the point of this story here. Complex projects must be understood up front, and we can't fall into the trap of doing what we think is necessary for those projects. We have to understand the challenges and do what the project demands in order to succeed. Now, I hope the 3 steps that we've talked through today about alignment, quality focus, engagement, and technical clarity have really helped you to get to that place of understanding the challenges of complex projects, and hopefully will set you on the path to success with those challenges. So I think we're going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening to our webinar today. I hope you found it valuable. I wish you good luck in your current and future projects, and I think, again, speaking for us all, look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.